Welcome back to Chords and Curves, where we dive into the creative minds of musicians shaping the sound of today. I'm your host, Blue Sirens. In this episode, I'm joined by Brillion, a lo-fi producer whose smooth textures and emotive beats have resonated with listeners around the world, especially through his work with Lo-Fi Girl, which has helped bring his music to a massive audience. We talk about the real impact of playlisting and how streaming has shaped his career. But we also dive into the deeper challenges, staying creative, finding a workflow, and pushing through those uninspired days. Brillion also gives us a peek at what's coming next in his musical journey. Let's dive in. Hey, Brillion, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for spending some time with me here today to talk about lo-fi music and what your approach is and everything for it. I know you've got a lot going on. I feel like I always see you on not necessarily social media, but you pop up a lot on Spotify and definitely on all the streaming services that I use. So I really appreciate your time being here with me today. And I just want to just dive in and talk a little bit about you and how you got started. So, how'd you get into making lo-fi music, and what drew you to the sounds and the style that you have when it comes to making your music?
Well, I guess so. Like on a fundamental level, and I've thought about this for a while. So like you got to go all the way to the beginning because I didn't come into music making wanting to make chill stuff because I was like young. I was like middle school, like super ADHD. I wanted to I wanted to make like festival crazy dubstep. So, but that intro to music was through my dad. Um, and he would just show me music on the way to school sometimes, and he introduced me to Dead Mouse and Cascade. Obviously, you definitely know Dead Mouse. Cascade, you might know as well. There's two massive DJs. So I was brought into music through the electronic scene. It was like house and stuff. But just over the years, just as I consume music, my taste developed. I come to enjoy like chill instrumental music a lot because I don't know, figuring out why I gravitated towards it. I think it's because I have a very busy mind and
Mhm.
instrumental music has no words. So it allows like a vibe to be set, but you're still able to like it doesn't really add to the mental clutter. Like if you don't want to have to intently listen, you just want to set a tone, you know. Like if I'm on my skateboard, like I'll my one wheel, I'll just throw on instrumental music so I can just kind of chill. So I feel like that's kind of been my reason to get into lo-fi. It's very like vibe only, you know. The whole thing is feeling because there's no words. Um yeah, and I think that's what drew me to it as well. It just played into how I developed as a person. I didn't want to make super intense music necessarily. I feel like also too my technical skill on production was gravitated more towards minimalistic music. I felt like that's just how I made stuff. So yeah, on a whole, that's really it. It just started from just a taste, and then what ended up happening.
Yeah. Well, I feel like your music has a really like warm and kind of like nostalgic texture for when I'm listening to it. So like what's your starting point when you're writing a song? Is it the melody, the drums, the vibe, or or maybe you're trying to capture a moment where you're like, "Oh, this would be a good time. I'd want someone to listen to my music."
Yeah, there's really no like definite plan of attack really when I go in. It's mainly just like for me, like I don't have a lot of theory foundation. A lot of it is just trial and error, and then building off of what I hear. Um, so like, I mean, obviously, most of the time I'll start with, you know, melodics, chords, stuff like that, and I'll just mess around. Um, yeah, I mean, at least for like my earlier work, it would kind of evolve around just simple melodies that I would get in my head, and I try to program them in, and then from that, like other things would just naturally evolve from that idea. Um, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's a hard question to answer.
No, it definitely is because
Yeah.
I feel like when you sit down to write music, sometimes there's just nothing in your head. There's no plan of attack, like you said. You're just like, well, let's try this. Let's try this. And then after like the first two instruments have been added, you're like, okay, now I have like a couple of options of where I may want to take this. So the starting point feels like, sometimes that can be a drum, sometimes it's a melody, sometimes it's just piano chords, or
Mhm.
I've even just used like a rain texture or a background sound to be like, how do I want this to kind of guide the rest of the song? So I feel like that's an unfair question that people ask all the time because it changes for every single song, I feel.
Yeah. I say, like, the best answer to that, I guess, would be, like, it's not really plan of attack, I just go in, and until something sticks out to me, I don't have anything yet, and that can be going in with lack of theory, not knowing, like, on a fundamental level where to start. It makes it interesting because I can just kind of develop things on it's kind of random almost. But I know that if I get something on a random level, on a to an extent, I used to play piano, so my it's very, super super like low level knowledge. Um, so it's like I just have to just force myself to sit down and just discover ideas I didn't even know I wanted to hear in a way.
Mhm.
It's kinda that can be hard, like, you're just digging and hoping that something reveals itself as long as you work. Um, but I've kinda developed a good process, I feel like, in terms of just allowing myself to get in that mindset, it's like, has to just come naturally, and I think that's what I've been struggling with too is because everything feels slightly more forced now because it's become more professional and I have to deliver a certain vibe. There's less um there's less freedom and that naturally makes it more difficult to just naturally generate ideas, at least for me. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I feel like you kind of hit the nail on the head. I feel like when you feel like there's expectations that have been put on you to perform at a certain level or do certain things, sometimes it feels like, well, that means I have less freedom to be the artist that I want to be, or freedom to grow in the direction that you want to go. So, like, has that kind of been like your experience when you're trying to return to making music that it feels more constricted? Like people want more of the same stuff you've released in the past, but maybe like, hey, I want to go in a different direction. And it's kind of tough because of maybe some expectations that social media or listeners have kind of put on you for asking for new music.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way I kind of have to deliver something that's inherently similar to what people come to me for, it's like I've defined that little pocket and I live in that pocket and now that I'm, living in that pocket, I have to stay within it to a reason. And maybe over time I can increase its how broad it is, slowly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do now is just like stay similar to what I've been doing that feels true to what people I know want. Um, but there needs to be a new flair on a certain level. Um, so it's not that difficult, but it's just I don't know. It depends on my mindset. Sometimes
Yeah.
if I'm not really feeling it, it feels really restrictive. But sometimes if I'm feeling extremely inspired, then, I don't really care as much. I just do my thing and that naturally sounds like me, which people are used to. I have to just let that be its thing. Um, and that's the hardest part, just getting that flow, you know.
Yeah. And you do a lot of stuff apart from like your own music. Like you also like mix and master music. You've mixed a song for me before. How has that influenced like your own style or your production style of doing work for other people?
Yeah, so I guess just to clarify slightly, so like I've only mixed like three things outside of mastering. So if you were like a special case, I'm like, you know what, I'll help a brother out. But now, like what I do in here, I only master in this room. Like I don't produce in here. Everyone's like, dude, you should make music in here. I'm like,
Not
I'm
what
so
for.
used. Yeah, yeah. I like because my role, my jobs are both in music. If I did everything in the same space, it'd be hard to define what I do in each space in a way. Separating the two is nice. So I only master now, so that's all I do. So having that process in mind is kind of nice because it's the final step. If you know where the song is going, like where what's going to happen at the end, you can kind of do things like with I don't know, it's like previs, like an animation they do previs. It's in a way you can kind of have like a mental picture. So as you're working, you can already have in mind like what you'll probably do at the end. So you can leave everything just well mixed but raw and let the master kind of elevate it to where it needs to go. I feel like in the past, like I'd not like overproduce, but I would just do too much in the mix and then the master, it would feel unbalanced in
Hmm.
a way. So I've been trying to do less in the mix and just really refine everything on a simplistic level. Um, Not overdo it because I feel like the more you process sound, sometimes you can suck the life out of it, especially in music that's like intimate music in a way, like instrumental. If you're doing like dubstep, you know, the mental approach is significantly different than lo-fi beats. So, and because I master all sorts of music, it's like I have to have the lo-fi route in mind, especially with how I master beats too. So it helps having knowledge about how it'll all end
Hmm.
is nice. I feel like in learning things, it's good to learn. Sometimes it's good to learn backwards. If it's possible, learn what the last step is, and then you're gonna obviously have questions like of how you got there, and you can kind of work your way down to the core of it, which is kind of nice. So you know that's been nice.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's been a really good learning process, not only for like how you want to approach your own songs, but also like learning from your people that send you songs to master, like learning what they've done in their music and how that mastering affects what you're doing for them, but also taking that back to your own songs as well.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, it's knowing any part of the production stage is useful, because like you can just use that as a building point or as like an anchor, So I kind of use like my mastering knowledge as an anchor in my productions. That way I don't overthink it as much. I can kind of trust that, it'll be where it needs to go after mastering. You have to have that vision in mind. And if it doesn't, then you have to go back to mix. But
Yeah. Well, I know you've been on several like lo-fi playlists. I feel like you're one of those top artists that gets featured on lo-fi playlists like all the time. I'm curious to know, how has playlisting like affected your career as an artist? I know for me personally, like I gained quite a bit of followers and several streams just by landing on one Spotify editorial playlist. And that for me was like, oh, I could potentially do this like maybe full time if I put more time and effort into it, and do some more social media and try and stay consistent. So that gave me hope that like this could be that full time thing. But I know you've been featured on several. So what's it been like being placed on all those playlists and being exposed to so many people through playlists? Or was there another time where you were not on those playlists, but you still were, gathering fans and getting traction as an artist?
yeah, so for me, it's kind of strange. So like when I first came into the scene, it was through College Music, and then it was through Chill Cow when they were Chill Cow. And Spotify, I feel like they shadow banned me when I was on Chill Cow when Bedtime Stories 2 came out. Um, and I think a lot of lo-fi artists agree, at least in the scene, that like Spotify really doesn't like SoCal Lo-Fi Girl because they have like this really large ecosystem within their ecosystem that kind of draws listeners away from their tutorials. So
Mhm.
don't get any placements on Spotify. I've been featured in only two times. That is it. Like Spotify is so limited. So a lot of the streams I get are just people coming back from their saves or like Lo-Fi Girl, the cycle in their playlisting system. But yeah, I mean, it helps. Playlisting is huge, especially in the current music environment. Unfortunately, I feel like music consumption has changed like on a fundamental level. Um, it's very like attention spans were shorter, so people are just cycling through playlists. Like if it's not what they want to hear, they just skip it. So you have to really stand out. But I feel like the playlist system is awful in a sense of how these companies control playlists as like a marker, and you're always throwing darts at this marker, hoping that you land one. And I feel like in the lo-fi scene, especially because it's an inherently easy genre to make. It's simple. It's beats, like it's not overproduced. You can crank them out if you really have a good system down. And I feel like a lot of artists, and this isn't throwing shade at anyone, just the genre as a whole, the pool of music is huge. There are some artists that have fat discographies, and sometimes they have all good music, but a lot of times too, just naturally with things, if you overdo it, the quality just falls, overproducing something. I feel like that in any genre too. Like the editorial mindset is awful for creativity. And I feel like I just don't, I used to focus on that because it is a major way to get exposure. And it definitely helped me. Like Lo-Fi Girl, their business is playlisting, at least for their label. And I mean, without it, like I wouldn't even be in this position at all. Like, and it's crazy how that economy has grown.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many weird things I think going on in the music industry as a whole, and we've made music such a commodity. Like it's so
Yeah.
common. Music isn't
Yep.
as valuable as it used to be, I'd say. Like, you go and spend $20 on like a deluxe version on a CD or like 30 bucks on a vinyl, and you're like, I have to get my money's worth on this. I've got to listen to
Hmm.
this. And now I mean we pay like $8 a month, $12 a month, whatever it is. And new music comes out every Friday, and you're like, now the commodity is your time. Like, am I
Hmm.
ready to invest my time into listening to this? And I feel like that really just puts like lo-fi music at kind of a disadvantage because it's background music, it's chill music, it's not
Hmm.
necessarily like putting it on repeat unless people just love the instrumental aspects of it or if that song really makes them feel something.
Yeah.
And that is kind of counterproductive to what the algorithms want, which is more content to push because you can't create, I don't think most people can create an emotional, touching instrumental song every 2 weeks. It's it's difficult because we don't feel emotions like that, and if you do feel
Yeah.
emotions like that, I don't know, if that's healthy. So, it's difficult, and, I think, like you said, you've been away for a little bit, and you're on the way to come back, so those
Mhm.
breaks I feel like are super important to make sure you can make that emotional connecting music to where when someone listens to a song, it's not only does it A sound good, not only do you feel happy with that song that you're releasing and it's meaningful to you, but also there's that element of someone else is going to feel that meaning behind the song because the song could be good but not have that emotional connection, and that's the toughest part to do consistently on like a 2 week, 4 week, 3 month basis. Like, I feel like most of the industry needs to go back to expecting albums and not singles so that
Mhm.
people can have the time to make something that is going to be more valuable than just, hey, here's a song. And even
Yeah.
because not every song on an album may hit somebody, but if they're still willing to stay inside that album and just skip to a song that maybe it'll land with them, then it's like, okay, well, as a whole, the album may be more successful in that situation than if everything was released as singles.
Yeah, that's kinda why I like to do albums. It's more of like a package. It's like a I'm all about, like, less is more. Like, I'm super tight on quality control, and that's why I really don't put out a lot of music because I feel like I'm trying to hold myself to a standard where I like the song. I'm, like, so critical of myself, and if I think it's listenable, then I know to other people it's probably substantially better than my own standard. Um, Less is more, like with anything. Like if you just create a really high quality product, or at least, I'm not a bragging point, but I feel like I've done a decent job of defining my sound, which is done pretty well. But if you do less and just really focus on making, really good stuff and keeping it periodical, like with anything, like if you do too much of it, people just start to care less. It loses its value. If something is rare, it makes it more valuable, even if there's no difference, just because it's rare. So in a way, like playing into that, it's definitely not the smartest move in terms of income, but I'm trying to keep it as like my hobby. Like that was always a hobby. I'm trying to prioritize that. Like I don't want to just dump music to make money. You know, I want to make music that I'm happy with and it's at my own pace. And if that takes a while, you know, I might get paid less for a little bit. Thankfully, I have this. This is more consistent. It's kind of why I did it, to kind of put the emphasis back on it being fun again. Um, but less, I think the takeaway for anyone who listens to this, or less is so much more. Like it just makes you look like, I don't know, any high quality creator, usually their discography or their pool of work is very limited. Think of any major film director, you know, like usually their pool is very limited but really rich, and I'm trying to keep it, that's like my focus at least. Um and it's, yeah, you got to like interpret it as you grow too.
Yeah, and I think you kind of already answered this question, but like, what's the key to making sure your discography is high quality and rich? And I feel like you answered that earlier when you just said, hey, it's a lot of trial and error.
Mhm.
And getting feedback on whatever it is you're working on, continuously learning and growing. Is there anything else like you'd recommend for people to try and ensure that when they do put out a song, that it is that high quality standard that they have for or they could have for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, music is very personal. It's like you're literally creating your own like music baby every time, and you're like hyper attached to it. You're going to be very judgmental of it naturally because you care about it. So a lot of times you have to separate yourself from the music and just make it because it's what you want to make. And if people like it, then great. And like, you got to just hold yourself to a standard. You know, if you keep working at it, you're naturally going to get better. Your taste will obviously evolve as you work at something. It's hard. It's like putting a definition on making something is almost impossible because it has to be you. Now you're literally translating your essence into sound almost. And that's like you can't really funnel that at all. It just has to flow, and I feel like if you just do that and you hold yourself to a standard, naturally your music will sound good. If it sounds good to you, then it'll likely sound good to a lot of people, because you're your greatest critic. Um, and there's different kinds of mindsets. There's some people that are very confident in their music making, and maybe they aren't the best, and like they'll get a lot of feedback naturally through that. Um, but having that mindset as like a fundamental basis is important because trying to define it is almost impossible because creation is like so abstract on like a fundamental level. Just just do you. And be confident of your sound. That's the biggest thing. Everyone wants to sound like someone else because everything is inspiration at the end of the day, you know? And it's hard to get someone else's inspiration out of your head. It'll naturally speak through you. But just let it be you, you know? If it sounds different from someone else, that's fine because you're not them, you know? Like that's the biggest thing. I tell all my friends that like I'm going for like this sort of sound. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, "What do you think of it?" They're like, "Ah, like, it's not, like, close enough." I'm like, "Well, that's fine. Like, let it not be close enough because it's your thing," you know? I think that's the biggest thing. I've been trying to kinda define that and as, like, a servant in sound, I have to kinda think about, like, how I can help artists, and I've kind of applied that to myself a little bit to kind of allow myself to create more easily. Um, you just gotta, anything that you feel is normal, and it's all valid. That's, you just gotta validate yourself as you go. 'Cause, it all gets better over time naturally, so
Yeah. And you mentioned something earlier that I feel like is also like a key aspect to like when you're down the right path of it. Like, sometimes it feels like you might be forcing the song, but when you can kind of just like keep digging and then you're like, oh, this sounds good, but I didn't expect it to sound good. And then you keep going with those things when you're digging, you just hit gold and you're like, this is
yeah.
something different. That's where I think that intersection of here's all my influences and who I am as an artist intersect. And when you can
Mhm.
just say, this is now the point where these merge and we go forward together, then it's like that's the point where like this is who you are as an artist. But
Yes.
it just takes so long to get there when you're doing the songwriting process.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like people try to immediately expect results when they first start, or at any point, usually. You just have to let it happen, like with anything. And like with success too. Like I'm not trying to sound kind of boastful, but in a way, like I got very lucky. Like I put some work in, and then luck met me in the middle, and then that created opportunity, and I jumped on that opportunity, and that just threw me to my trajectory now. So it's like it's a whole approach, you know. Um, but yeah, you what you said was completely on the nose. Like it just has to be you. It has to be authentic. You know, if it's not authentic, it's not going to be I mean, it can be maybe successful, but it's not sustainable. You know, inauthenticity, intentional or not, you know, is not going to be sustainable at all. So if you just embrace yourself on a fundamental level, I guess we're getting like super philosophical, but if you just embrace yourself and the fact that you're just making something to make it, it'll, you know, over time and practice, it'll get better and you'll be able to define like what you want to make. And then you just go from there, you know? It's super complicated, but also very simple.
Yeah, I feel like that also is the biggest key right there to imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
So, um,
Yeah.
I know you've done a couple collaborations as well. As you're gearing up for potentially more releases, is there anyone that you would be like a dream collaborator, someone you'd love to work with? It could be like a
Ooh.
music label, or I feel like a lot of artists now, well, at least like Tyler Creator's the main one that comes to mind, where he's like, "Oh, I'm going to do like a fashion collab." I feel like that's in the realm for a lot more artists these days if they just reach out and ask. So, if anything was possible, who would you want to collaborate with?
It's hard to say because it's like, you know, it'd have to be with something or someone that like aligns with what, you know, who I am, I guess. I mean, for me, like if you look at my room, I have like so much Lego. It's insane. Like it's just nuts. I'm a huge Lego guy. I mean, I did a song with Lofi Girl on Lego, and that was really cool. Um, like a Brillion theme set would be funny, but that would never happen. But like on an actual realistic level, um, I don't know. I feel that like on an artist basis, like this artist Galimatius, he's like this lush electronic producer. You might have heard of him at some point, maybe. But he was known from his collab project with I think it's Alina Baraz, I think that's her name.
Hmm.
The song was like Fantasy or something. It came out on Ultra Records like 2014 or something, a while back. He's super cool. And I feel like our sounds are alike in some way. So as an artist, he'd be pretty cool. There's so many facets that I feel like we would need to work with, but yeah, he's probably like the one that comes to mind. Hard to think of though, because there's so many people that they're like that we need to work with.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, there's so many facets of music too. Like, I know, like you mentioned, like you started music by listening to like EDM and stuff like that. And so, like, if you just limit it to one genre, like, there's still so many people. So when you think of like all the genres of music that are out there, it's it's too many people that you probably want to do a collab with just to pick one. I was surprised you got to just one artist so fast.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like if I didn't care about the genre I was making and I just created a new alias like Dead Mouse, like any OG people, it'd be crazy. Lego as a brand, I think would be the coolest company to be involved with just because I really like their company and what they do. Um, yeah, I don't know. It'd be neat, really cool to do a collab with like a software company that does plugins and
Hmm.
develop my own plugin for either processing or sound, like making sounds. Whoops. I feel like that would be really cool.
Yeah, I feel like I want to say that's like a possibility that's like out there because I've seen other artists that have like their own plugin, but
Hmm.
I'm not 100% sure about all the like the technical aspects that go into the back end of the code and all that aspect of it. And
Yeah.
that that's a whole other realm that it's not my forte. But I would say that would be really cool and really interesting to get a plugin from you. I feel like we get all these lo-fi plugins from major companies, but they
Mhm.
don't necessarily do the thing that maybe we want them to do all the time. It's more of like, hey, we think this is like we know this is the effect that
Yeah.
people are going to use or they think they want to
Yeah.
use, but it doesn't work necessarily the way we want it to when we open up the DAW and we start using. We're like, okay, this maybe does like 40% of what I want, and we have to learn how to blend in that plugin into certain aspects of the mix and when not to use it. And oh, this one instrument, it really throws a lot of trouble I don't want on this instrument at all. I gotta
Mhm.
do way too much EQ on this, so now it just runs the instrument. So I think getting a lo-fi artist perspective on a plugin or a plugin like Sweet would
Mhm.
be really
That'd be cool.
cool. Um, yeah, I would definitely buy into that.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be neat. I probably wanna do one that's like that would make, like, sounds, like, cool, lush sounds. That'd probably be what I wanna do.
Yeah, I think instrument plugins, those are the ones I turn to the most for buying plugins because I want to be able to make that sound or use those sounds in my own unique way. Whereas if it's an effect and it's like, we're gonna make this sound good, it's like I
Mhm.
said, it doesn't always play out the way you want, but I can make an instrument plugin, uh, you know, like we said before, it could be like you're the influence and I'm learning how to use this in my own way to where it now becomes my voice in that aspect. That'd be
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess those are some.
Well, I know you've got an album coming up. Can you tell us more about what's going on with the album? When can we expect it? And where can we stay up to date with when that's releasing or anything else that's going on with you in music?
Yeah, so I guess, like, I'll just go straight to the point. So, basically, I'm still making it. I'm in, like, the I don't know, like, submission process with Lo-Fi Girl right now, so it's already confirmed. The whole series is confirmed in the sense, like, they're ready to do the whole thing, which is nice. And now I'm just basically making the music and kind of running it by their A&Rs and just seeing how they're feeling. But so far, everything I've been making, I can kind of make what I wanna make, and they're really open to my ideas, which is good because then I don't have to really hold back. I don't wanna confine myself to a label. Like, I wanna make my music, I don't wanna have a label tell me what they want me to make unless it can be specific, but it's beats, like, it's not that crazy, I feel. So kind of in, like, the submission process right now, it's going well, um, and I have a few more songs to wrap up, and then I'm gonna go through and just listen back and polish up all the mixes, like, till I'm completely satisfied with everything, and then I'm gonna master, and once that's done, then we gotta find a date, So there's not even a date yet. It's currently still just making it and finding that balance, and I have a girlfriend too, so it's like that's also a full-time job in a way. Like, I have to tend to a relationship, which is also a commitment in my life, so it's just adjustments are being made, and I feel like soon I can feel it, like, it's starting to bubble up again, the creativity, which is what I'm waiting to happen, and then I'm just gonna capitalize and finish it out and let it be a good return. I feel like I can't let my return be unsatisfying, at least for myself. So,
Yeah, no, I think that's great, man. Like we've mentioned several times throughout this episode that creativity is a process, and when you rush it, it just destroys it and pushes it further away from you. So I'm glad you have that perspective and you have that knowledge of being an artist and doing this for a couple years that you know what's healthy and what's unhealthy to make your music and in a sense also like successful music in that process.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, for me, like, success would be just making ideas I'm satisfied with, and you can't rush it. You can't rush art. Like, I know you always say that, but you literally can't. Like, if you do it, you'll force it, and when you force it, it's inauthentic sometimes, and I don't want that to happen. I don't wanna listen back and be like, "Yeah, did I just put this out just to keep the content?" And I feel like nowadays too with everything, it's, like, so much, and I
Yeah.
don't wanna I wanna have the opposite. So I feel like if I go against the grain, I'll stand out naturally, and that'll only help my exposure and my longevity if it's unique. So,
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. We really
yeah,
appreciate you spend some time giving us some tips and tricks and some insight into how you got started and your process and just overall some really good philosophies for music and life.
Thanks. Yeah, of course, man. I love doing these. I love just talking about it. I feel like when I learn the most through just listening to conversation, because you can just hear their thought process. And yeah, of course, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for tuning in to Chords and Curves, the place where music and creativity meet. If you've enjoyed this episode, drop a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe so you don't miss future conversations with your favorite artists. Chords and Curves is a YouTube exclusive series, so make sure to turn on notifications to catch every new drop. I'm Blue Sirens. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.